you can have the best intention, you can use the best tool, but there's always a this or something that can go wrong with it.
Our featured speaker today is an IoT and smart cities enthusiast and the program manager at amend.org, where he is designing and implementing evidence-based solutions to reduce the incidence of road traffic injury in Africa. Jacques, it's a great pleasure to have you back as our featured guest today. Thank you so much for being willing to share this next leg of your journey with us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we really appreciate you making time on a Saturday night. I know this is a tricky hour sometimes. I know we definitely went through some questions about your background last time, but I didn't really make you dive into this a whole lot. I was wondering if you were willing to talk a little bit more about some of your experience growing up and maybe some of, the early life events and mentors you feel had a strong influence in where you are today.
Okay, thank you very much. So I was born in Ivory Coast, 1994, and then I was born in one city called Boaké. Then I moved to Abidjan, which is the capital, like with my parents, and like I spent most of my youth, from childhood to when I was young, there. So my parents are really religious. So very early in life, I was like exposed to God, church, and everything. And then I was determined, like from childhood, I think I was already feeling that I want to help people. I just want to innovate, try and find new ways to being done, especially like so in African countries, like developing countries, there are a lot of things that are not being done the right way. So I was having that desire inside of me. So everywhere I had the opportunity, I would try and do what I can to, let's say, put a kind of structure and try and put some level of innovation. So I went to high school, and then I think it's like the real trigger happened in high school because at school I wasn't doing much effort at some point, but I was having good grades. But I eventually started like playing too much, I would say, and then I lost focus. So because of that, I felt that everything was going down. So I was really, let's say, touched by whatever was happening. And that's when I decided, okay, to take things seriously, to take work, take, okay, God or whatever I learned about Him, to take the principles of life and whatever I need to be successful seriously. So I think it was I was in my second year of high school. That's when, let's say, the real shift happened, like from me being, let's say, like without proper focus or like me losing focus to me like coming back, my determined self, willing to change things. So I went to uni in Cote d'Ivoire. What was very interesting, so I wanted when I was younger, because my father is an engineer, electrical engineer, so he exposed me also to science and to a lot of mathematics and physics. I wanted to be a researcher and let's say be somewhere like trying to reflect and bring, let's say, innovation and solutions. But when I was done with high school, I've been sent to uni computer network and telecommunication. So the CEO of this university had a mindset which is like focus on entrepreneurship, and he will make sure that in every single activity or every single class we have kind of project based work which shows how to apply whatever learning you have into, let's say, solutions to help people in society. So that's where I got, let's say, I'll say the virus of entrepreneurship. Because before I wasn't thinking about entrepreneurship, I was more thinking about career. I went through that process. The CEO of the university eventually became my mentor. His name is Dr. Alain Kaposhishi, and it was in like 2010. He was part of the most influential youth at that time. He inspired me like to push more about entrepreneurship, to try and do more. And as I was going through my, let's say, bachelor degree, I got the virus and I started doing entrepreneurial projects, or I started like small scale things just to see. And I felt like I was able to make impact or direct impact to lives of people. After I was done with the bachelor degree as a valedictorian, I got a scholarship to continue for my master degree, and I did information system engineering and computer project management. So then I also I was looking for, like, when I was working on my project for my final year, I got the opportunity to be part of a competition with Huawei Technologies. Like, they organized that competition in Ivory Coast, and like they selected 200 around 200 students around computer network and communication, and then at the end of the process they selected 10, like after like courses and exams and like different tests, they selected 10, and I had the honor to be like part of that. So I went to China in Huawei Technologies headquarters. They shared about like the culture of the company and also about the technologies and innovation. So that's where, like, before that, I had a couple of ideas about IoT, smart cities, but then there I saw how much that can help developing countries. Okay. So from that point, I started working, like, for my master degree thesis, I chose to work on smart cities as a tool for sustainable development. Okay, so the first, let's say, application was to fix or to solve a problem of traffic management in Ivory Coast. From there, like, everything took. So I think that's, let's say, my background. I don't know if you want me to continue up to the entrepreneurship, or if like my first startup, or is that fine for now?
I think that's a really great initial rundown you've given us, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. It seems consistently that you have seen opportunities, either people that could connect with, or competitions, or connections with others, and you've really grabbed onto those and used them in a positive way. And I think that's really powerful. And I think that's super important for entrepreneurs. I think some aspect of luck comes from preparedness and willingness to, when you're not totally sure, say yes. Do you have any advice for someone who wants to develop that same sort of mentality? How do you go about, especially when you're doing a lot of things, how do you go about being able and willing to see the opportunities coming towards you and jumping for them when they come?
That's a great question. I think that the answer lies in what you said. So you mentioned that I was able to connect with people. For me, the understanding I've got of entrepreneurship is that it requires a couple of things, like the skills, the passion, the opportunity, and your network. Okay. So first of all, I would say to the person to understand whatever the person is trying to do. Okay. So for entrepreneurship, these are the four, like, let's say, I kind of identified during my journey. And then you need to go for it. The skills, you'll be building them with different circumstances in life. At one point, you will eventually have the opportunity to use that skill to get to the next level. So you need to make sure that you try as much as possible. So I'd say one mindset that would be really helpful is to think of helping others than trying to use them to get to your goal. So this perspective of using your skills to help someone else trying to do something allows you to seize one opportunity, okay? And then you create a network or a connection that's much more deeper than if you're just trying to use people to jump or to get up there. Yeah. So I think that's what I would say.
Great question, Spencer. Thank you so much. And thanks for that answer. I was actually wondering too if you could, and I apologize, I haven't recently asked you how to pronounce the name of the technology company you were working with, the startup. NIQAO?
Yeah, that's Nikau.
Macau. Thank you. When we last spoke, I know, that you were working with them. And I was wondering, whatever you would like to share or not share is totally fine. But, would you mind sort of taking us through like the lessons you learned through that experience and how you came to leave?
No problem. No problem. I get emotional whenever I talk about that company. So that was my first startup. I joined training, like that was another opportunity. I joined the training program called MEST, which is a kind of YC in Africa. So they take young African people, we come to Ghana for training for 1 year, and then they select 60 people each year. And we get training in like the base of entrepreneurship, like business, marketing, and different areas, IT. So we create teams and then we eventually pitch our ideas to investors. So when you get the investment, you have the opportunity to launch a company. Hopefully, and by God's grace, I got, like my team and I, we got the investment and started the company here in Ghana. Okay. Now, the lessons I've got, like I've seen signs like from the beginning, but I guess I didn't pay attention or I was too much into it to see. So the origin of the company is that we came together because of values we had and interests we had in education. Okay. That's the first thing. And then we were also somehow interested in music. Okay. So we came up with the first idea that we pitched to the investors at, because we have different pitches, like different sessions. So the first session, like early in the program, we pitched the idea and then we got a feedback that specific idea might not be the fit for the training. Okay. So when that, we all went back to reflect. And then we actually used the user innovation approach because I went for the MIT bootcamp training during MES. And then when I came back, I was like, oh, maybe let's try and use this approach. Let's try and innovate to fix our own problems. And so we came up with the new idea, like the Nikao, the version. It was through that user innovation process. And the idea was simple. We were trying to allow people to purchase item buy now and pay later solution basically in Africa. So buy now, pay later solution in Africa, and that's a great idea. It works perfectly fine, let's say in Europe or in USA and Australia or like in developed countries, but we're trying to fix or to have that set here in Ghana and then Africa. I'll say one first lesson I had to learn or I learned after everything was that when there's something at stake, everyone behaves like an angel. Okay. So when there's something at stake, everyone behave like an angel. Because we were all trying to get the investment, start a company, or like at least have some sort of financial security for some while. We were okay for the education, but we all decided to shift to go to consumer finance business. So that was the first. Over time, I could realize that not everyone moved or shifted the minds toward that idea. So when we started the company, like in 2019, we were hitting the ground and then we faced the first challenges. So we've been trying some other ways to innovate. Okay, so basically we had to fix like the stakeholders or like who would be the right partner to work with us. Financial institutions were skeptical because like let's say the setting is not easy. There are a lot of scammers and things. So technology solution, they are not much interested into small companies. That was one problem. We also had to fix like the customer side, the product and everything. But we went on the ground. We got in partnership with like most of the biggest brands here in Ghana. We also worked on getting like different people to start purchasing. But then we were not able to scale the model or to find enough customers. So after some while, it was as if we were just like everything went slow. And that's when the, let's say, we could see, or I could see that people were thinking different things. So as soon as we were hitting one wall, it's like we have to change the whole idea to make it work. And it went on and on. At first, we were doing the consumer finance, but then the setting wasn't ready. So we had to build an e-commerce website to partner with these people to get our own customers. Financial institutions want partner. So we had to finance or pre-finance items by ourselves. So we got involved in this, we were hitting some walls, and then people starting shifting. Oh, let's rather try and do this whole new idea. Let's try and do this whole new idea. So in 2020, we eventually had more understanding about the dynamics and everything about the product, the marketing and sales and everything. But we still had, I think the passion was lacking. So the drive went off. And at some point, each one of us were working on different things. Okay. And I was feeling I was pushing too much into one direction and I was not getting any help from my co-founders. When I had some conversation with them, at some point, they were thinking the same way, that they are pushing too much, like each one of them individually in different directions, and they are not feeling that we are helping each other. So when we got to that place, at some point, I was pushing so much, trying to find more partners, trying to find more customers. I was like doing sales, doing like operations, doing, let's say, the automation of some of our work. And I broke down. So I went through a phase of depression. And it was, I think at that moment, one more time, I've got someone. So Spencer, just the way Spencer said, I've got someone who was there, someone who is a professional coach, careers. I had the opportunity to work with that person, that lady on the project. And eventually she was willing to listen to more of the things. She was asking me about my company and everything. And when I shared, she understood that I was going through a phase of depression. So she was really helpful. Her name is Mami Casey. And then she's been giving me advices or ways to handle that depression phase. When the more I was explaining the problems we were facing, she was telling me, like, you need to open your eyes and move on. I know you believe in that idea. I know you believe you can make it happen, but you can't make it happen alone. And it looks like the people around you are not going the same way. So I eventually had to let it go. So at some point, I took a break. When I took a break, I eventually, the more I was resting, the more I was able to understand what she meant. And after that, yeah, I had to drop everything. We had a conversation with my co-founders, and I shared with them how I was feeling about the company and are they willing to continue. I mean, that conversation again confirms the fact that they were thinking about something different. So when we had that conversation, each one of us says, oh, I want to go this direction, I want to go this direction. And I said, okay, well, if this is the direction you guys want to go for, then I have to drop from the company. All the best. And so that's how I dropped from my first startup, and I started working with the NGO I'm working with now.
It can be so difficult, especially in those scenarios where you don't have alignment with everyone in the team to actually push forward on it. And I totally understand that.
Hi there. If you're enjoying this podcast, would you mind leaving us a review, a like, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform? Thanks so much. That really helps our reach. The Founders Voyage podcast is now proudly sponsored by VidOps. Caden at VidOps has been taking care of our editing since early 2024. He works efficiently, and I'm sure you'll agree that he does a great job. Thank you to VidOps for helping bring this podcast to life. If you want the same great support we're getting for your podcast, or you need help with video, photography, or animation, you can get 10% off at vidops.io using our referral code VOYAGE. That's vidops.io, referral code VOYAGE. Now back to the show. I thought that was pretty fascinating, designing, developing, and implementing IT improvements for amend.org. And you don't have to go real deep into this because I know we have some other questions. But if you want to explain what drew you to the role and how you kind of see IoT and AI able to solve road safety, that would be great.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. Okay, so well, I think when I got to the place of depression and then I had to move to another company, I was looking for something different. Okay, I just wanted to refresh my mind. And that's when I got that opportunity. So at first, the opportunity had nothing to do with tech. It was just they were looking for a program manager able to for motorcycle riders. So they built a training program and they wanted to train motorcycle riders to improve their road safety. So the way I saw it, because then I had done like research about IoT, smart cities, and development, or how to transition or help use IoT to help developing countries transition. The more I was doing this research, I understood that it's about changing mindsets. Okay. So I took this job just to learn how they are changing mindset of people, or how they build program to change mindset of people. So I joined the NGO and then started working. So I had to implement the program in different countries in Africa. And as you said, like the differences are huge. Sometimes it can be shocking, like the culture in one space and in the other space. But then you have to execute the same program and to make sure that the people receiving the program would be transformed. I think one thing that was really sometimes stressful is like the cultural awareness. Okay. So you can do something that for you is normal in your country or where you're coming from, but that can be so like an offense to people in the culture you're coming to. So you really need to make sure you don't push anyone, but you make sure that the job or the work is done. You also have the stressful experience of the different stakeholders. So I think this experience was, I would say, the most difficult I had like during the different like the execution of the program. So for example, I went for in a country we were supposed to develop the program collaborating with the foundation, but the commercial side of the company wants to make sure that whatever we're doing brings them commercial value as well. Meanwhile, we're thinking about NGO or like non-for-profit action, and the commercial company will put a lot of pressure on us on the field, trying to push us to do things the way they want. At the same time, we have the NGO, as in my directors, saying, okay, you have to do things this way. And then you have the foundation on the other side saying, well, I think you need to listen to the commercial, but the commercial, please, let's try and see how best we can. So that was like, for example, these are some dynamics of things that happened that were also stressful. But anytime we're done with the program and then we see people who feel transformed or empowered to be safer on roads, it's always a pleasure. Yeah.
It's so interesting to be able to work on something that you can feel the meaningful impact from it. Like it's something that's important and matters in the world. And I love hearing about that for you. And I'd love to understand a little bit more about what has been the most interesting aspects of the project to you to work on, and what have been any lessons that you've learned so far that you're looking to take forward life from this project. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the most interesting aspects for me, if I have to choose only one, I was interested in the big picture. Okay, the big picture of the program. So the research phase, the design of the training itself, and the implementation. I think, yes, now I get the answer in my head. So the most important part for me is the mindset shift. Okay, when people are transformed or when people are empowered. Okay, but that's empowerment is just the end of the process. So it takes the whole, let's say, journey for that shift to happen. Okay. So it was great for me to learn how they build the programs, how they design the content they are implementing, how they find the right stakeholders, implement or train the riders. So, for example, motorcycle riders, they were having a couple of bad behaviors on the roads that was leading to crashes or accidents and injuries or death. Okay. So the training program came up from like this research and identified things that they were doing wrong. And the training is supposed to teach them how to do things right on the road. Okay. So the mindset shift happens when they are doing things right. Now, why or how did that empower me for my next phase? Now I've got, let's say, a promotion in my company. So now I'm handling the IT for the NGO. So I was just program manager, but now I'm handling IT. They are interested into like how to improve whatever process or whatever research, whatever program they design, and whatever implementation they do. And it leads straight to like the next phase of what I want to do, because I trying to empower developing countries to transition to developed using smart cities is basically using IT to capture enough information, to put them together in a certain way to extract insight, then to create a kind of program that would lead to a mindset shift so that people can be empowered and change their lives and change the society themselves. So yeah, so basically the whole like the journey allowed me to get into the next phase of what I want to do.
Thanks so much for sharing that. I was actually wondering if you want to dive into the mechanics of what you're doing a little bit. So this is road safety for motorcyclists mainly, right?
So the NGO works on road safety in Africa and focuses on motorcycles and children. So for children, we have some courses or activities to allow them to be aware like of road safety. And then for motorcycle riders, we have a full training to also help them their risks when they are on the road. Basically, as I said, like we did like Amend as an organization did a lot of research about motorcycles in Africa and found a lot of problems or identified the most recurring problems. Then we designed a training program. So the training manual basically has A, B, C, D, E, yeah, five main parts where we try and tackle each things that the riders are not doing right. One example is the riders, for example, here in Africa, sometimes take the roundabout in the wrong. We can have traffic jam, or they can expose themselves as they are taking like the roundabout. So we would have let's say a few parts where they are taught by a local trainer that we trained before. Okay, so basically we give the manual and then we have conversations with that trainer. Then the trainer will train the riders. So we go on the field, we have some conversation to allow them to understand like what are the principles about roundabout. Then they go and practice. So when they go and practice, a couple of them will try and so we draw a roundabout like with the real size using, and then the riders will take the roundabout or get out of it, and we have different levels of compensation for them to identify problems, for them to identify what they are doing wrong. Then we teach them the right way, and then they execute it until it becomes like a kind of reflex. So this the detail of one section or one part of the training, and at the end of the training, we give them a certificate. And after some while, we also try and do a kind of survey to see how much they've been impacted by the training. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely does. Thank you so much. I know that you are quite interested in smart cities and obviously IoT and technologies like those. And me personally, I'm also very interested in them. I'd love to see from your perspective how you think what you're working on currently is leading towards sort of smart city development, and what you think the pros and cons of smart cities are in the future.
Thank you for your question. How is what I'm doing now, or how can what I'm doing now be enabled by smart cities for development? And what are the pros and cons of smart cities? For the first question, a smart city is a city where you use like technologies in all the functions or services of the city to improve efficiency and quality of life. So it's a big thing and has so many areas, including road safety, for example, or like traffic management, or how like health and everything. So road safety is a smart city kind of a service that a city has or an area. So looking at that perspective, like to be able to fix or work on like the different sides or areas of one city, you need to, at some point, I mean, the scientific research requires you to take a small segment, work on it, and then you scale it. That segment of road safety is, for me, let's say, a starting point. Okay. So for me, to be able to identify the behavior of the riders. Now, for example, we use observation. We use, let's say, cameras and like record videos. We use surveys. We use different kind of ways to capture information. But smart cities or IoT would allow you to go a step further. So now you can eventually even capture have cameras on the rider. As the rider is going through the city, you can see or actually perceive the behavior of the rider, which gives you more information than just a survey. You can also use some technologies like computer vision to be able to analyze even like the depth of the behavior of the rider. You can use telematics, you can use accident discovery devices, and so many things allows you to capture more information. Okay. So that side of the data collection can be empowered or enriched with. Then on the analysis side, when you take AI, machine learning, you are able to do behavior prediction, you are able to do modelize and impact improvement, you are able to do real time or understand more insight than you would have ever understood if you are just using a normal level of analysis. Okay. So IoT, now machine learning, AI, empowers the, let's say, whatever result you come up with. So when you come up with the solution, you are able to test it as well, do simulation with those, let's say, models, even before you implement them. Or when you implement, you are able to test them again. And I was sharing that with Nancy the last time, but basically what I'm trying to get to is, what is the 20% of things I have to focus on and fix so that 80% of the impact will be seen. The whole smart cities concept allows you to get to that level, very specific information you need to make the shift happen. But just as I was saying earlier, you can have the best intention, you can use the best tool, but there's always a this or something that can go wrong with it. So the pros of smart cities are like a couple of the things I just mentioned. It empowers you in the level of information or insight you can capture, the level of precision in the way you can design things. At the same time, you can also have like problems because now always human being who will be controlling the system, right? So human being can try and do other bad things with those technologies, such as controlling the people. Let's say they have their own objectives and then they want to use the people, control the people to do these things. There's also the IoT, and the whole thing uses a lot of energy. So how clean will be the energy that we're using to get there? You have the challenges about privacy, about, yeah, so you have like different things that comes to play. And the truth is, trying to deal with all of that is also an important phase to make sure that it happens. Yeah.
I was going to say, you kind of started touching on it too, but you and I were also talking about the behavior change element of this and, not holding your feet to the fire on this, but would you mind just maybe sharing, one of the approaches that you've taken that you feel has some legs in this or in a project like it, as far as trying to make that behavior change more enticing? I think, oh yeah, I was telling you about that really silly example of like how we have Smokey the Bear here, right? About fire safety and how he's become but everybody, it doesn't make sense when I think about it, really. But everyone knows who Smokey the Bear is. Everyone knows that only you can prevent forest fires. Like somehow they made that work, and you associate that every time you see it with, oh yeah, I need, like every time I see a sign with him on it, I'm like, oh, this is probably a fire area. I should think about that. I should think that it's dry here.
Yeah.
That's my tangent. But, is there something you've found or seen, that you think is an approach that you could take with these stakeholders in this setting? Or, and if not, what are you testing right now, I guess?
Okay, that's good. Yeah, I do remember that conversation. I'm still searching for now. Okay, I'll put it that way. Basically, like on that small project, so I'm looking at different perspectives of the way we train the riders to create it as a reflex in themselves, okay, to train other people to be able to communicate something to other people as they interact with them, okay, other riders, okay, because we can't train like there are a lot of riders, so we can't train all of them, but we train a few of them. So how much impact should we have in these few people so that it can scale? And yeah, I've been reflecting about the idea of Smokey the Bear and like how to use eventually like nice or funny things or interesting like social hacks to empower people to change their behavior. But yeah, I'm still thinking. Let me put it that way.
No problem. Not holding your feet to the fire. Thanks.
Now, we tend to end each of these, as I think you might recall, with a question about words of wisdom. The question is basically just what words of wisdom or lessons or experiences have you had that have most benefited you that you would like to leave us with today? And feel free to interpret that however makes the most sense to you.
The more I move forward and get to make steps in life, the more I understand that there are underlying principles that are connecting everything and that are the basis of success or achievements or even failures. The most important thing I'd say is to get to understand the underlying principles of whatever you're trying to achieve. When you get to that light, there's nothing that's impossible for you, you want to achieve. That's maybe the word of wisdom I'll leave us with.
I appreciate that. I don't know if Spencer said in his explanation, you can also steal wise words from someone else, which I like to do on a daily basis. Not steal, but borrow.
Yeah, I was recently learning something about like mental models, which is like basically the way we view life. There was one session about the Pareto principle, so the 2080. Okay. And I got to understand something on the point you just mentioned about stealing ideas or thoughts from other people. So basically, the way Pareto came up with the idea or the principle of 80/20 was that he gathered a lot of data and then he plotted the graph. So that's when he found the power graph or how to draw like the relationship between the 80/20. And when he did that, he understood like the power law curve, how to get power. What I understood is that, okay, gathering a lot of data, as in like reading or getting to know more about the people who've been successful or these, let's say, word of wisdom from other people that can inspire you is one step for you to get the principles. The second thing is that you need to plot correctly to find a pattern. So in all these thoughts or whatever these people are saying, there's something that repeats itself in different ways, but always repeats itself. That's how you find the principle of that specific thing. I think just what you said is correct. So also reading daily about people who are inspired or have achieved great things is helpful.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for, being so honest and open with us today about, the things that have gone well and the things that have not gone so well. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your journey with us today, Jacques. And thank you to everyone that joined today. We really appreciate you joining each week and making these conversations and these meetings richer. I truly believe this is how we all sharpen one another. Spencer and I and the team behind Founders Voyage feel really fortunate to be part of this community with you and to have the opportunity to bring this cooperative learning experience to you for nearly each week for 3 years. So we'd love to hear your nominations for future Saturday guests. And we'd love to have you back on other weeks when we try out other formats and work together collaboratively But in the meantime, thank you all again for joining, and we hope you have a great day and evening ahead.
Thank you so much to you all as well. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Spencer, for the work you're doing. As you said, like 8 week for 2 years now. That's incredible. So I really appreciate your work, and I also appreciate like all of the people coming to listen. You're doing a great job. It's inspiring. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it as well.
Thanks so much, Jacques. Have a great night.
Thanks.
You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.